Do you put the dick in contradiction? Or maybe do you possibly use your paper clips backwards? Or have you had an unsanctioned erotic entanglement? Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. But all those things happened in episode 5, season 2 of Severance, which is the halfway point of this show. And we're going to try to break it down and make some freaking sense out of it. Welcome back to Movies Good, Internet Bad. I'm Corey. That's Shane. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Shane, I'm jet lagged. I'm on 3.5 hours of sleep. I watched the episode. I'm pumped. Let's do this. Let's break it down.
All right, let's do it. So we start with the cold open, where a man is strutting a cart over to O&D, and he is whistling the song "The Wreck of Edmund Fitzgerald" by
Yeah.
Gordon Lightfoot, which is about a shipping disaster on the Great Lakes, a boat that sinks or something, kills a bunch of people. Which I don't necessarily think that this is a hint towards anything, but it does give us some sense of location for this
Mm-hmm.
show. We get sort of this Midwest vibe from this song,
Mm-hmm.
but then we also get a reference later in the episode, and we'll talk about it, to Milwaukee.
Yep.
And then
That's
a
right.
couple
Yeah.
episodes ago, we also had a reference to Grand Rapids, which was one of the severed workers that they hired for like the temp job to replace MDR.
You're right. In
So
the premiere.
we don't
Yeah.
really know where this show takes place, but we're getting the Midwest vibes right away in this one, and those hints have been coming out, which is interesting because they filmed the show in New York, I believe, in an old building, and so it doesn't seemingly take place where it is filmed.
Gotcha. Well, that's not uncommon in
No,
movies and
no,
TV shows, right? Wherever's
but
cheapest to film is usually
yes.
the right answer. So,
Yeah, but it is pointing us in a direction because that's been a big question, is like, where the hell do they live? And apparently
yeah.
it's somewhere in Michigan, Wisconsin area. But yeah, so what I've also found interesting about this scene is, first off, I mean, just in summary, he is taking equipment to the exports hall.
Hmm.
But the equipment he takes is dental equipment,
Yes.
seemingly,
Yeah.
which I found interesting because in one of the prior episodes of this show, you mentioned something along the lines of like, when a body is burned and you have to identify it, you have to use their teeth. So
Hmm.
maybe this is pointing towards that, something to do with teeth,
How
but
would that
maybe not.
even work, though? Because
I don't know.
Irving's Audi is still around. They're not plucking his teeth out of his mouth. It's the same body,
No, I
right?
think it's just in general hinting towards, I mean, like the Miss Casey thing, hinting towards uh, sort of necromancy,
Yeah. Things
raising the
somehow
dead,
Palpatine
or
returned.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But interesting stuff. But that's our cold open, and that's pretty much all we get from that
Yeah.
storyline
Did
this
we see
episode.
that guy's face?
No, we didn't.
It was
And
always obscured by something,
yeah,
right?
that
Yeah.
makes me think it's a reveal, and I have a maybe theory, but we'll get to it later in the episode.
We love
Because
theories. Stay tuned for
yes,
the theories.
but yeah, so that's our cold open. Little fun stuff there. But then we cut to Mark right after the credit sequence, and this scene is basically just to show us that he's actually not fully reintegrated yet.
Yeah.
He's taking supplements and stuff to help him reintegrate, but it is a process. We assumed in that couple episodes ago that he's reintegrated, but it seems like this is a longer process than what we had thought.
Yep.
And we'll get back to it later in the episode as well. But it's letting us know right away, because the big question is like, what's going to happen with this reintegration? It turns out not quite there yet. But then we cut to Helena, who is answering to Natalie and Mr. Drummond, and they are
Yeah.
explaining to her that Mark's got to finish this project. He's at
Yep.
81%, and we're going to give him Heliar, but this time we're going to give him the real Heliar. And
Yep.
Helena's apprehensive and like, no, I can do it again. And they're like, nope, we're going to take the risk. We're just going to let Heliar down there because we think that is the key to getting Mark to finish his work.
Yeah. She calls them savages or animals or something.
Yes, yeah, I
Yeah.
found that interesting too. She calls the Ennies animals because
Yeah.
Helly R tried to kill her, and
Right.
Irving now has
Exactly.
tried to kill her.
Yep.
We're 2 out of 4, and maybe the
Crazy,
other
man.
two will get there eventually. But I did find it interesting because in the last episode, you kind of thought maybe she's having this breakthrough and seeing the Ennies as something different, but in this scene, it either she's being performative or she doesn't think so.
Yeah, it's got to be one or the other, right? I mean, uh, uh, it's the person who's watched a lot of movies in me that's thinking she's going to eventually grow a heart of gold for them, but
Right.
maybe she's just cold-hearted corporate next in line for CEO type person, and that's just the way it goes.
Yeah, I find that interesting as well because I thought that's where that storyline was going too, and this points me kind of away from that. But again,
Yeah.
maybe she's just acting.
Yep.
But then we finally, in this season, right after this scene, we get Heliar back.
Finally.
Finally,
Yeah.
and what is amazing about seeing Heliar back is that it's so obvious the differences in mannerisms between Heliar and
Man.
Helena that like how did we ever even think about the theory any other way, right?
Right.
I think Britt
Yeah.
Lauer is doing such a good job of separating the two, and maybe it's just because we didn't really see Helly R unless you have rewatched the show multiple times for multiple years, and so we didn't quite pick up on the mannerisms being so drastically different
I
until we
didn't
see
think
her
about
again.
that.
It's like, oh yeah, like
Like
of
the amount
course,
of
how
time
could
that
it?
we haven't seen the show, it kind of just dumps out of your brain,
Right.
and then you see it, and you recognize it. I also loved how when she came out of the elevator, every time they do a hallway shot in this show, it's always steady cam and it's
I
always
was gonna mention the
very,
same thing.
very
Yep.
smooth. And then she comes out of the elevator and it's handheld shaky cam
Yep.
style. And it was so unsettling and it worked so well. I love those little touches, man. It's great stuff.
Yeah, that it's a great creative choice to show that she is feeling uneasy about the whole thing. And then the next couple scenes do the same thing.
Hmm.
When they're in Milchick's office, it's shaky cam the same way. And yeah, I found that a really excellent creative choice.
Yeah, our boy Seth goes through it in this episode a little bit.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, poor guy.
But yeah, so then we go to Milchick's office and we are um, he explains to the Ennies that Irving is not coming back because he's on a cruise, an extended cruise. Uh, but he tells
Which
the story.
you
Yeah, go
yourself,
ahead.
you just got
I
off a
did. I
cruise.
did just get off a cruise, so that was a
Yeah,
nice little timing.
is your innie dead now? Is that how it goes?
You know, we can talk about how dead I am inside another time, Corey. But he tells a story about, I'm going to mispronounce this probably, uh, Graxsjöpen, which translates to gray coat in Swedish.
Yes.
But apparently, this is a real story. I Googled it. King
Okay.
Charles VI of Sweden would go undercover and he was trying to weed out corruption in the church.
Okay.
So this is a real story that
Real deal.
Milchick tells, and he's basically explaining that Heli is actually, or Helena is actually like very noble and altruistic, and
Hmm.
is trying to it's like an undercover boss situation. She's just
Yeah.
trying to make everything better,
It's a
which I
little
found
bit of
interesting.
spin from
Yeah,
the
but of course,
corporation. Yeah.
Mark doesn't buy this at all, given what has happened, and
Right.
we'll get there. But then he takes them to this new three-person desk, and Irving has been edited out of the team photo, which is
Yeah.
very sad. But there's one thing that I have noticed about this season is there's this theme of threes. So you've got the three-person desk, you've got all the triangles and the elevators and stuff. You've
Hmm.
got the reference to the thruple.
Hmm.
We've actually seen multiple Henset thruple love
Yeah.
triangle things,
And we sure
both
have.
with Dylan and his Innie and Audi and his wife.
Yep.
You've got Helly, Innie, Audi, and Mark, but then
Yep.
you've also got Mark, Helly, and Gemma.
Yep.
Um, so a lot, and then later on, spoilers,
Yeah.
we've got potential Irving thruple
Yeah.
situation developing.
Yep.
So a lot of threes and love triangles, which is great, right?
Yep.
I love the constant themes there. But in this desk, Dylan asks for a funeral for Irving
Hmm.
because he wants to honor him.
Yep.
And then we get Milchick and Miss Huang prepping for said funeral. And
Yep.
I found this really interesting because you start to see the difference between Milchick's opinion of the Innies
Hmm.
and the company's opinion of the Innies.
Very
Because
much
Miss
so.
Huang is immediately like, you shouldn't do this because
Yeah.
they're not people. It makes them feel like people.
Yeah. You're
Uh,
enabling them.
yeah, exactly. But Milchick, it seems, has sort of a soft spot
Hmm.
for the Innies, and he wants to genuinely, make them feel a little bit more at home, even though, and at the end of the day, the company is truly just fucked up
Yeah.
beyond all reason.
Yeah, and this
But
started a few episodes back with when he got the paintings, and
exactly,
you see his reaction to it, and you can tell that Natalie's wasn't quite the same, which is another talking point that happens again
yes,
in this
yes,
episode. Uh, the the cracks in the armor on Milchick are starting to show it, and maybe he's the Lumen employee that grows the heart of gold, and it's not Helena in this
Yep.
season. Who knows?
Yep. Another thing that happens in this scene as well is that Mark is very apprehensive about the whole thing, and he's not really letting on to Helly why he is so apprehensive.
Yeah.
But obviously, we know that he is just slept with what he thought was Heliar and is actually Helena.
Yep.
But I also think besides feeling violated, he feels kind of like self doubt because he's like, why was I so stupid that I couldn't recognize it?
Hmm.
Right? Do I even know this person at all? And
Yeah.
that comes up a little bit later too.
It begs
But
the
then,
question there: why couldn't Mark and Dylan figure it out? Why was Irving the one who was able to crack the code?
yeah,
You know?
yeah, and I mean, for avid watchers of the show that we were still questioning part of it too. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
uh, but yeah, it does seem so obvious in hindsight, but
Yeah.
that's what they say
Big time.
about hindsight, right?
Yep.
2020. But then we get to the funeral, which is a trip. They give their
Ugh.
9 seconds of silence with this beautiful Irving pixel art. All the art, and who are the artists working to put the puppet show and the pixel art together, and the melon head,
I
which
don't
we
know, but
get
give them
here
a
as well.
raise. They
Yeah,
deserve all the money. They're
the
doing a great
little
job.
Oompa Loompas down there putting all this stuff together.
Yeah.
But Dylan gives a eulogy in which he uses the term put the dick in contradiction,
Hmm.
which is great, and also finishes it with, I believe, suck my own fuck, or was
Yeah.
it fuck my
Yeah.
own suck?
No,
One
so,
of
suck
those.
my own fuck. Yeah,
Suck my own
that
fuck.
was it.
Really great stuff. But essentially, the eulogy is explaining that Dylan feels like he let Irving down because
Yeah.
Irving asked him to help go to OND and you know figure all this stuff out, and he basically told him no.
Hmm.
So that was he feels guilt there.
Yeah.
Uh,
Milchick had a great line in there too, and he said, "A little sweet with your normal salt."
yes, yes.
Which again,
Little
I think that
sugar with
might
the
be
salt.
Milchick
Yeah,
starting to develop some feelings for the innies.
yeah, a little
So
bit. Um, but yeah, then we get this phenomenal melon fruit head, which was just spectacular. Dylan is eating the
man,
ear.
so creepy. It's so
Really
creepy.
great.
Ugh.
Really great. Another detail I noticed was above the head, it said quarter 882, something like that.
It was
Um,
70 to 82, so it was 12 quarters, which is 3 years.
yeah,
Which is honestly, I don't know if that's like a long time or a short time as far as this stuff goes, but
not
eh,
sure.
I
But
mean, as a human being, to have your brain separated from your body 8 hours a day for 3 years straight would probably feel like a lot. I'd have to guess.
yeah, and what we get the hints of later, which we'll get into, is that this is kind of a 3-year master plan too,
Hmm.
right? So this is not just like a guy going down there for 3 years and tuning out like Mark has done. This is like
Yeah,
a concerted effort,
and it's
right?
another three.
Yep, that's a yep. Good point. Good point.
Yeah,
I didn't even catch that one. See, this is the stuff you watch this show for.
so the hard hitting facts that only movies good, internet bad can provide.
Yes. Um, but so in this funeral, Mark continues to be distant, and he mentions this phrase, which I'm going to mention specifically for a reason, which is he's not dead, he's just not here,
Hmm.
right? So he mentions that about Irving. But then Dylan is like, "What are you doing?" basically, and lets Helly know that Miss Casey is Mark's wife because
Yeah.
that revelation came about with Helena, not with Helly.
Yep.
And so obviously this shocks Helly, and she's like, "Oh, I gotta help. Let's go get her." Blah blah blah,
Yep.
because that's what Helly R would do, right?
Hmm.
And Mark is very distant about it, and is still not really sure is this really you or not. And then to me, where this scene closes, where she basically is like, "Stop being a fucking asshole." That's a Helly R quote,
Hmm. It
right?
is.
And so I think for that, for him there, he kind of knows that okay, this is legit.
Yeah. And the interesting thing there is that at this point, at least from what it seems like, Mark is already in the process of reintegration. And we've seen in the outside world that Mark guesses Audi can be kind of a dick.
Hmm.
And now maybe that's starting to bleed a little bit into his innie life, and
Yeah,
everyone else is starting to notice it, which is I think it's only going to ramp up as the season progresses.
Yeah, I didn't think about it that way, but I think you're right that his mannerisms, I read it as he was just feeling very violated from essentially being raped by
Well,
Helena
I'm
Egan.
sure that's part of
I'm
it.
sure it's part of it.
Let's not
Yeah.
underplay that because that's
Yes.
horrible.
Yeah. And really, I mean, Helly's kind of feeling the same thing, and they haven't even gotten into what actually happened.
Yeah.
So that will be a probably pretty dramatic scene in a future episode.
Yep.
But yeah, good stuff going on there.
Oh
So
yeah.
then we are cutting to Milchick's performance review, which is
Monthly.
fantastic. Monthly
Monthly
performance
performance
review
review. What company does monthly performance review,
for
Shane?
4 hours with a lunch break.
And you don't get to provide your rebuttal until after lunch.
Correct.
What a
Uh,
weird
but
company.
but yes, one thing that's interesting though is before the performance review, he talks to Natalie and basically says like, did you get the weird vibes from the paintings like I did when you received yours? And you can see a little bit of apprehension in her face for a bit, which you kind of got in the office scene a few episodes ago
Hmm.
with the paintings as well. So it's like Milchick is trying to stick it to the man a little bit.
A
It's
little
like,
bit. Yeah.
is it just me or are these people nuts? Which that to me signals that there's some wheels turning for
Yep.
him, and that's going
Yeah.
to be his arc for the season. Which is it. I think that's a great arc if that's the
Oh,
direction they go with it.
terrific. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially because he's the one who just got a promotion. And like
Yep.
typically when people get promotions, they become more of a company person.
Yep.
But this
Yep.
seems to be going in the opposite direction. Also, if Hollywood needs anyone ever to play the person that just looks dead behind the eyes, whoever this actress is that's playing Natalie, call her, hire her.
Yes.
Because
She is great.
God, that 1,000 mile stare is something else.
I know. I know. And also call Trammell Tillman for anything that you could ever want in the future of
Did
Hollywood
you
because
hear
he
that
is.
he's in the new Mission Impossible?
Oh, is he really? Oh
Yeah.
man,
I don't know
let's
if it's a big
go.
role or not, but I saw that on the internet the other day, and it's pretty
He's
awesome.
so good.
Yeah.
He's fantastic as Milchick. But let's get to the performance review where he is explained to use too many big words, which I find really interesting because all of the Lumen people use big words.
Yeah.
So is this like a demeaning type of thing, or like maybe there's some race undertones there that the show
Could
is
be
trying
that.
to call
Yeah.
out, right? That no, you're not allowed to use big words like we are, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You're getting some subtle racism, not so subtle with the paintings, but some
No,
racism
not at
in
all.
there. But then they explain that he uses his paper clips backwards,
Hmm.
which confuses as to the direction they should read the reports. Like, okay.
What planet are we on? Come on.
But then, of course, they get to the big one, which is basically Mark S is not completing his task, and you are not helping him with that. And we
Right.
almost got Helena Egan killed.
Right.
So fix your shit,
Yeah.
basically.
However, they do say that Mark S is going to complete Cold Harbor underneath Milchick's steward, which
Yes.
and then he says, which is going to be one of the biggest accomplishments, not in the company's history, but in the planet's history.
Yes.
What?
What
Like,
is he doing?
what does that mean? What's going on here, man?
Yeah. So my theory about this whole thing is that Cold Harbor is using Gemma as a proxy to bring back Kier Egan.
Okay.
And the board is sort of his consciousness, and they're trying to reanimate Kier Egan. And so for them, it's almost like the second coming of Christ, right?
Hmm.
Like the
Okay.
resurrection. Uh, that's what I think it's going towards, but
Yeah.
we'll see where it goes, right? You're getting
Hmm.
this weird religious cult vibe out of it. It's the founder head on ice like Walt Disney.
Yep. Yeah. You brought that up a couple of times that you think that's kind of what's going on here.
Yeah,
So
that's my theory, but
yeah.
we'll see. We'll see. But yes, Milchick explains he will then tighten the leash. Like he's gonna go, hard ass from
And
here
boy,
on
does
out.
he!
Like, and he does. He
Oh
does.
man, what a
Um, but,
scene!
but before we get to there, we do get a scene of Dylan where he is leaving the funeral and glances up at the poster that says "Hang in there,"
Hmm.
which was Irving's final words to Dylan.
Yep. In
And
Woe's Hollow.
yep, and
Yeah.
he has the epiphany that this is important and reaches back behind there and retrieves a note from Irving. And I'm going to read the note because I
Oh,
have a screenshot of
you
it.
jotted it
Oh,
down. Good
I
for
have it.
you.
I have it.
Wow.
It says, "From Dad, first turn right all the way down the hall and turn right, turn left, down a long hall and turn left, turn left, turn right, right, left, left, right, right, left, right, left, left, right, right, left, left, down long hall and turn right, then left, right, turn right one more time, and all the way down a long hallway.
Jesus Christ. So first of all, uh, that building is gigantic.
Yes.
Second of all, what cheat code does that open up from the
Yeah,
video
is it the
game that you're
Konami
playing?
code
Up, up, down, down,
in
left, right, left.
directions?
I,
I caught the same thing.
I need to take that and like get a whiteboard and draw it and see how many like circles or
Well,
whatever
that's what PD was
directions it,
doing.
it
Yeah,
takes you in.
just mesh it with PD's map, and we've got it. We've got the directions.
Man, cool. I love it.
But then we get the scene you were mentioning, which is Milchick confronting Mark. It is also the thumbnail of our video.
Yes,
And
yes.
he mentions that Mark has left 6 minutes early, and this is unacceptable.
Well, I mean,
And
yeah, the work is important and mysterious. It
yes, of
can't
course.
be leaving 6 minutes early.
And then essentially blackmails him, saying, I know that you fucked Helena Egan, the heir to the company, and he's going to hold that above him and make sure that he finishes his work. Uh, which, yeah, there's a whole list of HR violations that would entail.
Yeah,
Uh,
big time.
you know,
So this is my theory time now. After this scene, the first thing that popped into my head when Milchick said that to him, and not only did he mention that the act happened, but then he says to the person who's next in line to run this company or whatever,
mhm.
what if she gets pregnant with Mark's kid? Is Mark's kid now part of the Egan succession line?
That
And
is
does
interesting.
that now make him even more important to Lumen? Or is that something where if it happens, the kid is treated like a, like a bastard child,
Right, right.
and they like do everything they can to not have the kid be a thing?
I didn't think about that. I don't know if this would be a show that would go surprise pregnancy. That feels like too tropey, but I could definitely see it being so complicated that it could work.
Yeah. Or it could be like a commentary on abortion.
Yeah, it's true.
So who
I
knows?
don't
Like,
know. Well, I didn't even think about that. So that's a good theory. That's interesting.
all theories are good. Most
That's
are
true.
wrong.
No, I agree. I agree. All theories are good. It means you're thinking about it, right? You're
Yeah.
engaging with the show, which I always enjoy.
Yep.
But yeah, we've got a couple more scenes to go through. The first is Ricken and Devon, who are basically arguing about whether or
God.
not they want fame and fortune
Oh,
or moral integrity. When, of course, Devon is going to side with moral integrity.
yeah, of
But
course.
Ricken is so tempted by the offer that Nat has given
Nat.
him, which I find great too, is that they're on nickname terms.
Yeah. I'm really glad that Rickon exists in this show because you need some levity with such heavy subject
Yeah,
material. Every time they cut to him, I end up chuckling by the end of it. So like he's a great character for the show.
yeah, and another thing that I've seen tossed around on the internet too is in the prior episode, the fourth appendix
Mhm.
really sounded like Ricken's writing. So maybe there's some
Oh
sort of
man.
connection there
Oh, that could be
between
fun.
is he just writing all the lore for the innies, for all of these, Ortbos and whatever. It's
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
Ricken rambling on. So
I
we'll see if that goes anywhere.
I love
Surely
it.
this is
And
like developing into something, right? Like they don't
yeah, yeah.
continue to show Ricken unless it's very important, right?
Yep. And it's just one of those things where, it's commentary on artists when they sell out, and
Yeah.
they just start doing whatever it takes to make the big paycheck. Like
Yep.
I don't know if Rickon is like actually a good author. Like, the show kind of makes you think that he's not,
Right.
but the fact that even if he was taking the big paycheck and just doing whatever the studio tells you to do, right? It,
Yep.
it turns into the indie director that goes on and directs a Marvel movie because I just saw
Yep.
Captain America tonight.
Yep.
That whole sort of thing. Yeah,
But yeah. So then we get on to Audi Irving. I was happy that we still get John Turturro in that role. I
yeah,
figured he would still be around,
yep.
but this is actually a really good segue into what seemingly would be a full Audi performance. Like he's never going to go back to the innie. At
Or
least I
so
don't
we
think
think.
so. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah,
As of now, it doesn't look like it.
nope.
But this is a full Audi scenario. But he goes to his payphone again and basically says like, "Oh, I think they're on to me," or "That's why they fired me." He's not
Mhm.
fully sure what went on down in the innie, world. But this really is a tell that like he's really trying to infiltrate the any severed floor.
Who do you think
Um,
he's talking to on the other side of that phone?
I want to say it's got to be somebody we know, right?
You would have
Um,
to think, right?
Maybe it's like Miss Huang or something. Like imagine that being I'm thinking the craziest answer is the right one, right?
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
It can't be anything like Miss Cobell because at least I don't think so because Cobell was his boss for a bit.
Right.
So I don't know. It's got to be somebody that we know, right? Maybe it's the guy whose face we didn't see
Oh,
in
yeah.
the
Could
first
be.
scene, something like that.
Yep.
Because it is this export hall thing, so maybe that guy. But I have another theory about that guy, and we'll get there right now, actually. So
Okay.
we
Cool.
we run into Burt,
Yeah.
and Burt is basically like, "Hey, you came to my house and banged on my door, and so now
Yeah.
I'm following you to figure out why." And he explains that he was fired because of an unsanctioned erotic entanglement, which is funny because that implies the existence of a sanctioned erotic entanglement,
That is true.
which could be the waffle party, but maybe there's others. um, but he explains that his husband is named Fields, and they had to cancel
Fields.
their trip to Milwaukee. But that's my theory, actually, is that it's Bert's husband, and we haven't seen him yet. And
Oh.
so when we see his
Ooh.
face, he's going to be the
Ah.
export hall guy.
Oh, okay.
That's
That could
going to
be
be
fun.
my theory, is that it's
Yeah.
actually Fields.
I
But then he's basically like, "Come over for dinner,
yeah.
have some ham. Let's get this throuple going."
I thought it was interesting though, because in season one, they very much make it feel like it is a retirement
Yeah.
for Burt, and then
Hmm.
you come to find out here that he got canned because of the affair. Uh, so now you've got two guys that are out of a job basically because of the same thing, right?
Hmm.
And there might be a little revenge plot
The
that's brewing
perfect
here.
backdrop for love, Corey.
Looking for love in all the wrong places. Lumen Industries.
Yes. Um, but that's the end of that scene, and then we cut to the final scene, which is Mark furthering his reintegration process.
Hmm.
We do get one thing seemingly confirmed, which is that Ragabi explains that Lumen basically pays the morgue to give away fake cremated remains.
Yeah. And she
Uh,
also says, just like everywhere else in this town. So it's not just
yep,
the morgue that they've
yep.
got paid off, it's places all over.
Hmm.
Who
Yeah, and
knows?
that's kind of referenced in that Lexington letter that was released as the supplemental material too. That
Mhm.
they control the media, the cops. Like I, she said something like, "I couldn't go to the cops because they're paid off, so I
Right.
had to go to this independent journalist and give you the letter."
Yep.
So yeah, they very much control that town. Um, but then Mark says something about Gemma that I referenced earlier. He says the same words. He says, "She's not dead. She's just not here."
Hmm.
Right. And he
Which is
said
the
that
same thing that
earlier.
Mark said earlier about her.
Exactly. So it's
Yeah.
kind of bleeding into each other, like you
Hmm.
mentioned. And I found that interesting because right after that is when it starts to click for him.
Hmm.
Right. And so you get the subtle bleeding into each other, and then
Yeah.
they say the exact same line,
Huh.
and that kind of triggers him into doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So then he's basically going through his wellness session, and then he finally sees Gemma and has this very emotional look on his face, and we cut to black.
Yeah. It looked to me like Adam Scott didn't sleep for 3 days before they shot that scene, because
Yeah.
just the bags under his eyes would probably look like the ones I have after the work and travel that I did this week. It was just like really really good, and the cross cutting between the innie and the outie and the hallway in the
Always so
house and
good.
then the
Yep.
hallway, it's so precisely done. I love the way that they handle all that stuff. It's really really good.
Yeah. And was that you'll have to remind me, was that the break room that he was going towards, but then it opens up into the hallway? I believe that's
So
where he saw her the last time, where they kind of passed each other, was on the way to the break room, right?
it looked like that because the way to the break room was gray
Yeah.
and all the other hallways are white.
Right. I
But
think it's that hallway.
yeah, and the shot of his head poking out into the severed floor, and you know that it's Audi Mark was,
Yep.
man, that's some good stuff.
But yeah, I think all in all, very strong episode. We got some confirmations of things. This season seemingly has no interest in filler episodes, which is great.
No, Not at all.
We're getting so much revealed. Even in this one, that doesn't feel like a lot of actual plot has happened. We're actually getting a lot more information about things.
Yeah, this one felt like a lot of setting the table for the second half of the season.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that way they can
agreed.
just mash the gas pedal down and I think we're on a collision course, right? The innie and the outie stuff is eventually going to come to a head. But I'm curious to see how far they go with it because we already know that they're working on a third season.
Yeah.
So you can't have like the ultimate payoff at the end of the season just yet. But I'm curious to see how far they go.
Yeah, my thought is that they're going to discover what Cold Harbor actually is, and the Audis will conspire to try and stop it
Stop
from
it from
happening.
happening. Okay. Yeah.
And all the while, Mark is kind of flipping back and forth between Innie and Audi. And so they have
Okay.
to figure out a way to stop Mark Innie from finishing the work, even though he's flipping back and forth. So
Yeah.
that's my thought for how, like, the ticking clock is that percentage, right? They've
Yes.
set the
Yep.
stage for that Cold Harbor percentage.
Yeah.
So we're going
I'd
to
love to
find
go
out.
back and watch like episodes 1 or 2 and see what percentage he was at
Yeah,
there because
yeah.
it's at 81% now. I think is what they said in
And
this
then
episode.
he gets to like 85 in this episode,
Does he? Okay.
because he's still refining in the episode. So my thought is that that's the ticking clock. They find out that Cold Harbor is actually
Hmm.
something really terrible,
Really
and they
bad.
try and
Yeah.
stop it. Yeah, that's my thought.
Man,
It's like the
it's
Death
good
Star.
stuff.
Got to
It's
blow it
good
up.
stuff. And we're only
But yeah,
halfway done. That's like the
I
amazing
know.
part is it's so dense. There's so much we've talked about, and we've still got 5 more weeks, which is great.
Yep, I'm hyped.
Yeah, man. So that's going to do it for this one, folks. We would love to hear your comments, your theories. Drop them below. We will respond to all of them as we do for every video. If you like this video, go ahead and like it. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet and you like movies and TV shows, please go ahead and click that subscribe button and tap the notifications bell because we drop these weekly right after the episode airs for every episode of Severance. Also, be on the lookout. We begrudgingly went and watched Captain America Brave New World this week, and we're going to have a review of that on the channel as well, which will be a hilarious version of the "It's so over, we're so back" meme, just over and over and over again. So stay tuned for that and so much more, and we will see you guys in the next video.